with him, and they started telling me about this place called Project Rescue. And she gave me a brochure, and I looked at it and kind of like, oh, well, as time has gone on and as things many times do, it became more and more aware to us that we had some situations that could benefit by what he's going to talk to you about just a few minutes ago, or a few minutes from now. Ronnie is going to tell you his story, and I won't proceed to get in that. They've been in Alabama since 2011, but he's been working in this work since 1989, and it's a work that is, if you're not aware of it, it helps men in drug and alcohol. It's an on-campus, year-long drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. It's very near and dear to me because I've got a grandfather that died at age 61 as an alcoholic. I never remember doing anything with him because he had no interaction. I have 3 uncles that all died under the age of 60 as alcoholics. So it's a very, very near and dear subject to my heart as well. We are benefiting from it in this congregation. We're thankful for that. And without taking any more of his time, Brother Ronnie Crocker. And if you need a brochure, Patrick has some brochures. If you'll raise your hand, he'll get you a brochure and you can keep up a little bit. Thank you, Ronnie.
Please raise your hand if you did not receive a brochure. It looks like everybody got one. Good morning. And I've just been enjoying. I drove around a little bit this morning and looking at in between 2 mountains. I think there's a sermon about that. Did you have? I'm sure Don's preached that. But thank Don, thank the elders. Appreciate you for this time. Let me go ahead and qualify first on for the reason you need to listen to me this morning, okay? I need to qualify. I've been involved in addiction myself. It overcame me. I can't relate to the young people here this morning. I didn't have any religion, any church, any reading of the Bible in my home, any prayer. So I did not have anything. So at the age of about 17 in the late 60s, when all that was going on in America, turned to drugs and starting off really, I guess nicotine, but marijuana. And then at the end of it, totally addicted to opiates on a methadone, which is a very strong opiate-like drug that the government gives the heroin addicts so they don't pillage and steal and rob. And then I was injecting cocaine, totally addicted to those drugs. This is at the end. This is at the end of my addiction here. When I kidnapped this policeman, it was really a suicide attempt. I just didn't pay my room bill, spent the motel room on, I don't know, am I touching something? On drugs, and it was late at night, probably around 12 o'clock midnight, and the manager wanted me out of the motel. That's all they wanted to do was kick me out, but I was on the run from the law and didn't want to go to jail. Methadone was a very painful drug to come off of, so I pulled a gun on, I don't know if I'm doing it here.
That's not you.
Okay.
The mice.
I gotta say, looking at this building, it's just so beautiful. I love wood, and I would love worshiping in this building every Sunday. You all probably are used to it, and especially from this view. But, so I know what it's like myself, struggling, and all the pain and heartache, and what I did to my family, what I did to myself, what I did to my children, and everything. Just drugs is a taker, the devil's a taker. And one thing I knew about the devil before I knew God, because I knew what he had done to me after I made those bad choices. So that's how I qualified. Then in 1989, I got out of prison. Went to prison for 5 years for this crime, and then got out of prison and started Project Rescue. It was really halfway through my prison sentence. 2.5 years into it, I obeyed the gospel. Gospel preacher came in, and I grew in Christ. Really, Project Rescue, that brochure that you're reading about Project Rescue, it's based on what I did in prison after I obeyed the gospel. And it's as simple as this, our program. We're not professionals. I'm a minister with the little lamb. And what it is I prayed, I read the Bible, I studied the Bible, and I did the Bible. Pray, read, study, and do. That's yeah, he said, am I? Oh, I'm not. I have to start all over. This one's probably on, huh? Let me move that back. Okay. Did you hear me in the back? Patrick, could you hear me? Oh, good then. I think it was picking me up, these mics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak for a little bit. And the best part about when I do a class, that's why I love to do a class, is if you think of a question about me, if you think of a question about Project Rescue, anything you want to ask me, in a little bit I'm going to come down after I introduce this and to where you'd be able to ask a question. If not, I'll keep talking. And then if you have a question, just raise your hand. I want to start off with this from a mother. I deal a lot with families. In fact, the hardest part of my work is, that's why I love Patrick's here. And Patrick's in our program. You all know Patrick. Many of his relatives are here. And he's doing so well. And I love to see Patrick sitting with his family, because that's the good part of it right now. But the hard part of it is I get calls, just like I gave you that brochure, and it has the phone number on it. I do this, I speak, we go to the Freed Hardeman lectures, different lectureships, and spread out those brochures throughout the brotherhood and speak at congregations like this. So we get calls from all around the country. We've had members come to us from all around the country. And I hear the stories of mothers and grandmothers and what they're going through. And this one, so I wanted to lead with this. It's written by a mother, Alicia Cook. And it's lessons learned from loving a drug addict. And it'll give a picture of what the family goes through. Loving a drug addict can and will consume your every thought. Watching their physical deterioration and emotional detachment to everything will make you the most tired insomniac alive. You will stand in the doorway of their bedroom and plead with them, I just want you back. If you watch that person that you love so much disappear long enough, you start to dissolve too. She goes on to write, just imagine waking up and wondering if today will be the day that your son, your grandson, your loved one dies from addiction. Drug addiction has the largest ripple effect that I've ever witnessed firsthand, she writes. Causes parents to outlive their children, causes jail time and homelessness, causes sisters to mourn their siblings, it causes nieces to never meet their aunts, causes an absence before the exit. You will see your loved one walking and talking, but the truth is you will lose them far before they actually succumb to their demons, which eventually they will if they don't get help. You will learn to hate the drug, but love the addict. You will begin to accept that you need to separate who the person once was with who they are now because of their addiction. It is not the person who uses, but the addict. It is not the person who steals to support their habit, but the addict. It is not the person who spews obscenities at their family, but the addict. It is not the person who lies, but the addict. And yet, sadly, it is not the addict who dies, but the person. That's what's so hard about this. That's what's so very hard. I guess you can say, how many have ever been in the eye of a hurricane? Anyone? Oh, okay. You know what it's like. They say it. I lived in South Florida where we had these hurricanes. And in the eye, sometimes the sun can be out, right? It's calm, no wind, maybe a little breeze, but it is totally calm in that hole when that part of the hurricane goes over. You could stand there and it's just calm. Well, the drug addict, the alcoholic, resides in the eye of a storm, oblivious to everything that's going on around them. And they call those outside rains feeder bands. And as those feeder bands are ripping his family, as the ones who love him the most or are the most, to shreds, he's oblivious to it, in denial, not even aware of what it's doing. He doesn't know because of the drug, really because of sin. They've done a lot of study now. They used to have to wait for an alcoholic to die or drug addict to die to study their brains. And they'd have to cut the brain open to study it. But now with all the MRI, CAT scan technology, they can see a brain and how it works, how it lights up. And they know the different areas of the brain, what they do. And all of those areas get harmed with addiction. In the way, our brains are very delicate. They're like, you know how you see a spider web? When the dew's on it and the sun's shining through it, you see an intricate spider web, very complicated. Taking drugs or drinking alcohol are just like going through that spider web. Everything gets messed up and moved around. And there are specific areas of the brain that are involved with addiction. Your brain has a memory, a reward system. Just like you're thinking about where you're going to go to lunch today. Maybe you've already made up your mind and you remember what you ate before, and man, that tasted good. You're going to want to get it again. Our brains do that. We have that reward system, so we keep doing what we need to do. And it has a memory of triggers, too, when you turn that around with bad. This front part of our brain is like the CEO, the general, that makes all the decisions. All of that gets really just messed up. Well, the only way I can explain the sickness of addiction is to use myself. And then after I do this, well, if you think of a question. I'm a pickle. My wife's a cucumber. My wife, Jeannie, grew up on the mission field. Her dad preached for many years, 70 years or so. She grew up in Nigeria, where she was homeschooled by her Christian mother and part of the church. She was walking in the light her whole childhood and young adult. They moved back to the States when she became a teenager. She went to a Christian school, ended up going to Freed-Hardeman University. For that time, she wasn't perfect, none of us are, but she was walking in the light as he is in the light, like 1 John 1 says. During that same time, I was living for about 15 years in a jar of vinegar called sin. Now, you put a cucumber in a jar of vinegar, what do you get? You get a pickle. And you know that? I'm still a pickle. Still a pickle. Really what it is, especially when you're doing any kind of sin, young people. Oh, I love it when the young people are here because it's not only drugs and alcohol that harm your brain. Everything does. Every sin, even a lie, is harmful to your mind. Stealing's harmful to your brain. Gambling, pornography. See, with the drugs and alcohol, though, it's a double whammy because you're sitting recreationally taking the drugs or the alcohol, and the chemical itself is messing up your brain. That's why it's a double whammy. Well, I was living in that, what it was for 15 years. You can call it evil, ungodly, badly, sinful. I'll just call it ungodly. I was thinking for 15 years ungodly thoughts. And those ungodly thoughts turned into ungodly words. And those ungodly words turned into ungodly actions. And then all of those thoughts and words and ungodly actions turn into sinful, ungodly habits. And then all those thoughts and words and actions, which became habits, seeped into my soul and corrupted my character. Now, I was baptized into Christ in prison, June 1st, 1986. All of my sins were washed away. I was born again, added to the Lord's church. But something wasn't washed away, which still makes me a pickle today. And that is memories. Memories in the addiction recovery ministry or business, they call it triggers. If my wife were to see a pile of salt or sugar or white powder of some type on a table, she wouldn't think anything. I'm thinking drugs. My wife, who's a cucumber, if she sees somebody bent a spoon, oh, nothing. Who's bending my spoons? I'm thinking somebody's cooking drugs in this house. And then that color of orange that most syringes are made out of. Now, even that shade of orange is a trigger. Songs are a trigger. Places, oh, Patrick, I prayed for you last night. Patrick had about 10,000 triggers go off from the time we pulled into Trenton till right now. He doesn't know I planted a GPS in his baggage. No, I didn't. But he's doing good. So here's what scripture on it. Did it come up? See, all those thoughts and words and actions. Here's the scripture on it. James 1:14 and 15. But each one is tempted when he's drawn away of his own desires. See, it's in us. See, there are desires in me now, because I know what heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, no, I don't know what meth feels like. I've heard about it. But cocaine, I guess I did crystal meth one time and didn't like it. Let me back up. But there are marijuana, alcohol. I know what it feels like. Jeannie doesn't. Some of you don't. Some of you may. I won't ask for a show of hands. But I have that memory, and things remind me of it. Jeannie doesn't have that. That's still with me. That's why I have to have a program my whole life. It takes doing what I started doing in prison. I still have to do it. Have a good support group. Have people helping me. Have people that I'm accountable to. We want that. But every man is drawn away of his own desires and entice. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. You know, sin or a relapse has a birthday in your heart, in your mind. When lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. Then when sin, look at it says, when sin is full grown, it brings forth death. So any sins, those evil words, actions, habits, they usually start off small, but they become full grown. You may be thinking about it, any age that's in here, any of us that are, I think we're all accountable in here. That's why we have to be careful with addiction. Have to be careful with it. Okay, let me ask if anybody would have a question. Any question about anything I said? I'd like for you to turn to Romans 7 while you're thinking about that, because I have a verse I want us to look at. Yes. The worst consequence of the sin I have to carry with me every day is the guilt. The guilt. See, I've done a lot of good. I got out of prison in '89, bringing people to church. A lot were being baptized, and I've helped thousands upon thousands. I don't know how many. I've been doing a lot of good works. But of course, I know I can't work my way to heaven, but that's the human condition right now. Somebody came in to get me. I want to give back. But it's mainly for neglecting my children. And my daughter today has issues with men because she didn't have her dad there. Her dad was out shooting dope. And my son, and when I see that. So I guess guilt is the main thing. And we really need a good understanding of the grace of God. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't make it. It'll tear you up. But also, my mind is damaged. My nervous system is damaged. I'm thankful. It's probably because I went to jail so many times. I was a dysfunctional addict. And I went to jail. I was doing a life sentence on the installment plan. 30 days, they let me out. 60 days, they let me out. 90 days, 6 months. So all those times in jail, I wasn't harming my brain anymore. But just the harm. That's a good question. Anybody else? Yes?
Do you think we have a problem even in the church about making excuses or confronting the truth about situations that, this is not a sin, it's a disease.
Right. Well, we do have that. And that's why we're having a hard time. We never thought, Charles Baggett and I, when we started in Alabama, we knew we were had a rough time in Florida because that's a mission field. The church, Lord's church is very weak. But when we went to Alabama near Huntsville and Madison and all, so many churches in that area, we never thought finances would be our problem because we figured we're doing something and the Lord's church, this is a good work, and also it's in the church so much. But we've had great trouble getting the Brotherhood's attention because of this. Because for one thing, they think you can send, if you have a problem with someone in your congregation, you can send them to a psychiatrist or psychologist or to a secular program. Now a psychologist and a counselor, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if they also incorporate the Bible into their counseling. But I tried them all. So it is. Now the whole thing with it being a disease, it is a sickness in the sense we all see from Eve and then Adam when they partook of that forbidden. It changed them. It stole their innocence. A lot happened that we don't even understand. It separated them from God and caused a lot of trouble in their life. And that was sin's birthday into the world. Sin is damaging. Sin is a disease. We're not born with it, though. This verse I'm going to look at in Romans 7, the Calvinist type thing where they say you're born with this, and then they want to say you're born with the gene, the homosexual thing, and the alcoholic. I don't believe you're born with anything. You may be born with propensity. Some people are born maybe with the propensity just to be an alcoholic or just to drink beer. Or some, so you never should take that first one, whether it's a drink or a drug. But in the sense of when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin. When sin is full grown, that's like if you compare it to cancer, what they call it, metastasizing, where it spreads, and it spreads throughout your mind. And sin is contagious too. That's why we need to be careful of the world. But no one is born that way. And that leads me into Romans 7, to where Paul's view at the end of Romans 7, he sounds like a madman. Is it really not that you're born that way, not that it's sin's fault. He's talking about that a person, a soul, us, we cannot overcome sin without God. We can't keep from sinning without God. And we can't overcome it. And that speaks right to our trouble in America. Well, our prisons are full, jails are full, opioid epidemic, opioid health epidemic. They're trying everything but the right reason to get them to stop. It will never be stopped without God. That's the only way. Anything else before I get in? Because I want there to be questions, even if I don't get to Romans 7. Yes.
I think this is related to your situation that you found yourself in. I was watching a story, if you will, a documentary of these safe houses now they're trying to come up with for drug addicts. In other words, you bring your drugs in,
Right.
you safely shoot up.
Right.
If you overdose, we'll be there to bring you back to life or help you. And instead of looking at this thing and saying, look, you're going down a dead-end road, you're sinning, we need to get you out of this.
Right.
But the society is trying to sugarcoat it and say, well, we have compassion on these people. We want them to safely take this drug instead of looking on at, this is going on, it's more prevalent in Canada. But you can bet you it's going to migrate into the U.S. And these safe houses are going to be, and what they, for those that don't know, the drug addict brings their drugs in, they give them clean needles, clean everything, they give them a room to go in and take their drug, and if they overdose, then they have personnel there
to help them. It's the same way why the government is just in a panic at what to do. They just keep throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks because they're not, in a massive way, they're not going to embrace the gospel. Now, the thing is, though, and I'm talking about me too, I could stand here all day and point at what the government's doing and what all these crazy things they're doing, because they did the same thing. Methadone, the drug I was on when I kidnapped the policeman, was given out by the government. It wasn't trying to help the heroin addict. See, they really don't care. The reason they're doing something like that in the methadone, and now the Suboxone too, is so they don't rob and kill for the drugs. They're finding a way to where this certain part of society that they have given up on, they know locking them up doesn't work, so we could just keep them in one area. I think if there's an island somewhere, that's what's going to come up next. But it's nothing works but the gospel. So my point is, we can point our fingers out all day long, but they point right back to us. Because I'm talking about everyone in here, from the youngest right up here to the oldest, and I see younger back there. We have the answer. If you have a Bible in your hand or in your pocket, on your phone or whatever. Here it comes again. That's the solution. That's what worked for me in prison. I tried everything else. Everything but God. I tried. My parents did with me. And the only thing that worked is the gospel. I've tried it. I've tried with guys. We had guys in the program who were serial relapsers on opiates or serial relapsers on alcohol. And I've tried different medications because I kind of gave up on them. And we were just enabling him just to keep relapsing. So I've tried different medications, but I found none of them works. God has given us the solution for sin. Drugs, alcohol, all the other stuff is sin. And we have the solution, and we need to tell the world. If anybody has a hotline to President Trump, please, get me in there. Don't just throw money at it. He could throw money our way. But go ahead.
In your situation, probably is mostly on drugs or anything else in your life. You start out real small and then snowball.
Yeah, it always started, even before I was set up for it. Of course, I didn't have God. I didn't have the church, so I didn't have anything to fight it. And that's what's happening with most people that are in the prisons and the jails. But of course, some members of the church, a lot of them fall into it too. A lot of our children, a lot of our youth are falling away. But for me, it started out, like I said, smoking cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes. And I knew it was wrong. Parents told me it was wrong, but I did it anyway. I felt kind of cool doing it, holding it, you know. The whole thing is like that. And then I didn't have good friends. Then I was shy, so I just kind of gravitated to whatever be my friend. And the easiest ones to be friends with were people that were already smoking pot. It was just, we kind of related. They're easy to talk to because, oh, yeah. Really, no one's going to judge you. Everybody's too high. So it was easy to have a friendship with somebody smoking pot. And then from there, it's just like the drugs that were popular in that age. We found uppers, speed, that would speed you up, speed your brain up. And I did a lot of different, and then LSD, which is, I never really liked it. Isn't that something? Just a lot of it had to do with the peer pressure and the crowd I hung around with. I did what they were doing, and I was just like a wave tossed to and fro, going along like that. Did LSD about 200 times. I tried to count it up one time. Never liked it. Never really, after I started doing LSD, I didn't like smoking pot because it would give me kind of a flashback to the LSD. So, but then when I found opiates, the strongest, most damaging drug, the drug that's taken our country down right now, I guess I found opiates in, 1979. When I found that, I thought I found heaven. That's how the devil worked. I thought this is the solution of my life forever. I could take a vacation without leaving the house. All I had to do was take a pill, crush it up. I started doing the pills, then I started snorting it, then I started mainlining it. So it all, with addiction, I've helped some people that went straight to heroin. And there's a lot of younger ones, 13 and 14 years old, that are in programs right now, heroin addicts. They're at the age of 14 and 15, they're at where I was in my 20s. They're way ahead now because they're so much smarter than us, the children. So yeah, all sin. Yes, in the back. Well, for me, I was how did I support the drugs? I was such a dysfunctional drug addict. I would steal, but I got caught in everything. First time I did a burglary, I remember I worked in this place, had a key to go into this apartment complex. I took the day off. I said, I'm going to get high today. I'm going to steal something. Put on a wig and a dress and tried to wear them high heels. Went in that apartment and I was stealing stuff. You know, it was silver. It was probably $2 or something. This jewelry, I don't know what I had. I come out, the cops are waiting right for me. First burglary I ever committed. And you know what? For that burglary at around the age of 18, I was put on probation. And I was on the same probation in front of the same judge for this crime that I showed you when I was 32. They just kept letting me out, giving me more time. So I was in jail, but I would steal something and then bring it back to the store, steal, pawn, any way I could get it, or just being around people getting high. I didn't have any scheme to make money, really. Who else? Who else have a question? Yes, Don?
So many young people getting involved, and at an earlier age, I saw a thing the other day that said the average American boy by the time he's 11 has tried alcohol, the average American girl by the time she's 13. As parents and grandparents, to avoid our children in Project Rescue and grandchildren project, what are some things we can do proactively?
Good. This is so good. And this is why I love it when young people are in the class and when parents and grandparents, what we can do so they don't end up. And we wish we at Project Rescue, we have some young men there that we want to speak to teens and go to area. We were at an area wide and had 3 of our members up on the stage, and the teens and the preteens could ask a question just by sending a text to the youth, anonymously or something. But what I always tell parents, and I'll tell young people too, is what you need to do is teach, teach, teach. It's all about teaching them the Bible. It's a defense. It's being proactive too, just like you would take vitamins so you don't get sick. Take the Bible. Thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. So you take it so you don't get sick with the sickness of sin. So you teach and teach. But I always say this, parents and the young people, when it relates to our work, because Project Rescue is mainly for members of the church. We'll allow anyone in because we've baptized a bunch, but it's mainly for members of the church, the household of faith, Galatians 6:10. The main one, he was in the church or she was in the church all the way from she was little. There's probably someone in the cradle rolled out, chewing on a little rubber Bible. And then they're in the toddler, and then all the classes, maybe some of you all these classes, all the way up. How many vacation Bible schools, church camp, how many sermons have they heard? But when they get around the age of 18 or 19, see, some of them are just hard-knuckling. I'll get my time. I got to sit here and listen to this old big-nosed, bald-headed guy right now, but I'll get my time to do my thing. At every church this morning, there are youth white-knuckling till they get 17, 18. Then at 17, 18, 19, they went out to conquer the world, to do their own thing. Then 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years later, we get a call on that number on that brochure. My son, my grandson, because we just handle men. And they've ruined themselves financially, physically, their relationships. If they have children, their wife has left them. There's a restraining order. They're not even allowed to see their children, but they have to pay the child support. Their life has been totally ruined, and we begin there. So my point with teaching your children and your grandchildren, yes, you want them to stay on that narrow way which leads to life. But know this, and young people know this, you may be teaching them to find the way back. You may, whatever it is, and that's what we do. See, Matt works with the youth, right? He's working with you. He good? He good? Well, I'm youth minister plan B. I don't think Matt will take your cell phone, will he? but I'm taking Patrick's. He won't send you to the dorm. You could use that upstairs. But when it's just, we really, I just joking, but we take up where they leave off. Another thing that we stop at 1:15. Another thing we do, I suggest you do, it's teach the Bible as much as you can. And let them to learn it. Make sure they're learning it, not just hearing it. Make sure they're doing it, not just reading it and hearing it. But also teach them about the science of addiction. See, because they're all, you all are smarter than your parents, right? Yeah, every one of you. You know you're smarter than your parents, and you're definitely smarter than your grandparents. You know that. They're smart. They don't want to listen. So if you could teach them just the facts, just don't try to scare them, because you can't scare them. Man, today, after all these movies and these games, man, they know it all. You can't scare them with anything. But if you show them just the facts, and young people, I'd like to encourage you to study it. You get a lot of good things online, government things. There's a lot of science on addiction. I disagree that you're born that way, but what it does to the brain, there's a lot of good science. Like I said, it just really is brain, all sin is, but especially drugs and alcohol. It's so damaging to your brain that for that reason, we teach the guys that in the program. About they need to know what they're doing to their brain. That'll ruin their high when they know what they're doing. Maybe it feels good, but sooner or later, what goes up must come down. Yes, in the back, did somebody have a question? Somebody else? Because we've got about 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. Yes?
How do they get into the program?
Yes, typically we get a call. And then on our webpage, which is on that brochure, there's an application. That starts the process. But typically it's an elder, a minister, or a lot of times it's a family member. And then they call. My wife answers that phone, and then I get on with them. They send the application. I send that. The application process can be done in a day or two. And then it's getting them there. Primarily, where our strategy is, like really with Patrick. Patrick was living here and doing the wrong thing, and drugs, whatever, alcohol, hanging around with the wrong people, going to the wrong places. So what we essentially did when Don called me, we extracted Patrick from this negative. What I mean by we is you all as the church and Don and everybody that helps us at Project Rescue. We extracted Patrick from this negative environment and inserted him into a positive environment at Project Rescue where and then we watch him. A man comes in the program, we separate him from his cell phone and his cell phone number, and we give him a restricted phone with parental controls that I can watch. His travel is restricted. He's not allowed to have cash. Don't ever give cash if you're trying to help a drug addict. Giving cash to a drug addict is like pouring gasoline on a fire. So you don't want to do that. Yes, Don?
If a parent, what's a good response? What's the first time you find out your child is experimenting with alcohol or drugs?
That's good. What's the first thing a parent should do? I can tell you what I'll do because I know, I see the damaging effects of what it did to me and what it does to all the people I've tried to help. You can't maximize it enough. If you find your child smoking a marijuana cigarette, drinking a glass of beer, or one of these wine coolers or something, I would overreact. I've seen too many die. There's a dot connected between doing that first one and death. I've seen too many die. When lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. This is the only area of Scripture that is pro-abortion. Listen now, spiritual. Lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. So you want to kill that birth of sin in their mind. You have to separate them from it. That's why we take great strategy and action to keep them off it. So I would react great, get them help. I'm not saying put them right into a program, but I would do a lot of the things we do. And see who their friends are, who they're hanging around, restrict their activity and everything. And then if you catch it again, and sooner or later, try to get help. Call us. I'd be glad for you to call me, even though they're not coming to the program. Try to call somebody who you trust that knows the answer. But attack it. Attack it, because they will, and they're smart. The deceptiveness of addiction is very smart. Very smart. I heard one time an aunt say, well, you weren't on any drugs when you were around me. And the guy opened his eyes and said, yes, I was. So sometimes you may not even know they're on it. They're smart. They got if they're carrying around Visine in their pockets, let's see, get up against them. You know something's wrong, or different things. If they're chewing breath mints all the time to hide the alcohol. They have drug tests you can buy at Walgreens. Or I'd send you a drug test. I wouldn't be, I'm telling you, you're trying to save their life. That's what we're trying to do. I would give them a drug test. And then if it keeps on and on and on, then they're going to have to go inpatient. Before there's a line, like I said, I'm a pickle and my wife is a cucumber. There is a line. There was a time when I was doing drugs that I was not yet a pickle. There was a time in my life, and really it was around 18 and 20, maybe early 20s, and then I'm stopping, where I wasn't a pickle yet. It hadn't taken over, man. Remember it says, when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is full grown, there's a time where it's growing and growing and growing, and then that's what, if you read the last part of Romans 7 that I didn't get to, it's where the sin totally takes over, where you don't want to do it, but you do it. The very evil you don't want to do, you're doing. The good you want to do, you can't do, because the sin has taken over. That's when you become a pickle. And when you become if your child or your grandchild becomes a pickle, crosses that line, they never go back. So if you can catch them, that was very good. Very good, all of you questions. That's why I like the class the best. So I'll go ahead and stop right here.